There are many different paths that people can take to get onto the property ladder. And one strategy that people could use is something called rent vesting. This is the strategy that my husband and I used to get onto the property ladder in New Zealand. And while this strategy may not be right for everyone, it can work really well if you've got a good plan. In today's video, I'm going to be unpacking what rent vesting actually is and sharing my journey with how we got onto the property ladder using this strategy. I'll also be sharing some key things that you need to keep in mind when you're deciding whether this is the right strategy for you to take to get onto the property ladder and grow your wealth. As always, feel free to skip around the timestamps to save time. Let's get into it. So first of all, let's understand what the term rent vesting actually means. Rent vesting is a strategy where you buy a property in an area that you don't necessarily want to live, but you can afford to buy in. While at the same time, you'll continue to live in an area that you actually want to live in and rent there. In a nutshell, you buy a property where you can afford it and you rent and live where you desire to live. This is exactly how my husband and I got onto the property ladder back in 2015. We were boarding with family at that time and we had a decent amount of savings between us, but not quite enough to buy in Auckland where we were wanting to live. So what we decided to do was buy an investment property in Hamilton and rent it out while we continued to live in Auckland. We had a 20% deposit to put down on the property. And keep in mind that this was back before the LVR restrictions changed for investors and also before the Bright Line changed. We held this property for 2 years renting it out. We had one set of fantastic tenants over the full 2 years and we self-managed the property. Over the 2 years, we topped up the mortgage with our salaries by choice so that we could pay down the property a bit faster and build some more equity. We also made lump sum payments to our mortgage as well. After 2 years, we've reevaluated our situation and we were actually in a position where we needed to move from where we were currently living. We looked into the option of whether it was viable for us to keep the rental property and also buy an owner-occupied property, but once we'd run the numbers, it just wasn't gonna work for us. I was pregnant and about to go on maternity leave, so our incomes were going to be dropping. So we made the decision to sell the rental property and buy ourselves an owner-occupied. It actually worked out to be really perfect timing for us because our tenants were moving out as they had just purchased their first home. When we sold, we ended up with a decent deposit that we were able to put down on our first family home in Auckland, which is where we're still currently living today. This strategy worked really well for us because we're able to use that investment property to grow our deposit to be able to buy in Auckland. Over the 2 years with making the extra repayments towards the mortgage and also with the capital growth, we were able to then have a really good deposit to set ourselves up really well for our property in Auckland. Now, it's important to note that this strategy is not for everyone. Most of our deposit was in cash savings rather than in our KiwiSaver, which worked really well for us because you are not able to buy an investment property using your KiwiSaver. If rent vesting is a path that you want to go down, you'd want to know this really early on so that you know exactly where the best place is to save your deposit. This may be in shares or cash in the bank, for example, as opposed to saving it up in your KiwiSaver. For some people, the strategy won't work and it makes more sense for them to buy a first home that is owner occupied. So let's look at a few examples of where rent vesting might be the right strategy for you to get onto the property ladder. Firstly, if you live in a town or a city where property prices are above your price range, then buying an investment property in another location that is more within your price range or at a lower price point may be the right strategy for you. Secondly, it might work well if you live in a current location that you don't want to commit to and buy a property in. Maybe you prefer to have some flexibility and not be tied down. By purchasing an investment property and renting it out, you're getting yourself on the property ladder while not committing yourself to a particular location to live in. When you stay renting yourself, you have a certain level of flexibility where you can move as you please. Thirdly, maybe you've got some plans in the future where you'd like to travel and you don't want to be tied down to a location, but you still want to grow your wealth and get on the property ladder. Rent vesting can work really well because you'll have tenants in your home paying rent, and these payments can go towards your mortgage while you're away traveling. Fourth, if your goal is to grow your wealth through property and investing in property. Property is a popular and well-known strategy to grow your wealth in New Zealand because you not only create capital growth, but you also get another income stream through the rental income. In New Zealand in 2024, there are a few changes coming into play which are in favor of property investors. If you're thinking that rent vesting might be a good strategy for you to get onto the property ladder, then feel free to get in touch and we can have a look at your numbers and make a bit of a plan on how to help you reach your goals. That wraps up today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.